This Chase Bank imposter scam drains your accounts in minutes.
All the money that you had in there is gone, and you actually owed Chase $895. My world fell apart. My whole world fell apart.
Jennifer Davis says she lost $25,000.
I was horrified. I was devastated.
Checked her bank accounts and found her savings account nearly empty.
So there were 11 wire transfers in total, 2 on our personal accounts, 9 on our business accounts. We lost close to $140,000.
There is a special place in hell for the people that can do this to someone.
According to the FTC, people reported losing $10 billion to scams in 2023, and the number one type of scam was an imposter scam. If you don't know what to watch out for, scammers can trick you into handing over your entire life savings without even realizing it. Across the country, victims are responding to what they think is legitimate fraud alert, only to find out too late that the real fraud was the text itself. Soon, you'll see why banks like Chase won't get your money back, even when they know it's a scam. The 5 psychological hacks scammers use to fool even the smartest people, and the one thing you can do to easily avoid ever becoming a victim of a scam like this. Oh, and before I forget, I just created a free checklist to help you lock down your identity and stop scammers. This checklist gives you quick steps with clickable links to secure your accounts. You can block payday loans, protect your tax records, and a lot more. Plus, I just included over 10 agencies where you can report scams like this. There's no hoops to jump through, just click the link below to get it for free. Now, the first couple had $137,000 stolen from their personal and their business accounts. It was just another day when Scott's phone buzzed with a fraud alert from Chase Bank. The message warned him of a $4,500 wire transfer attempt, asking if he had authorized it. Now, at first glance, everything looked up and up, completely normal. The text merged seamlessly into his existing Chase thread, just like every other fraud alert he had received before. No suspicious numbers, no sketchy formatting, just a simple urgent question. The question was, did you approve this transaction? And Scott was cautious. He didn't immediately click anything or respond to the text. Instead, he did what any savvy business owner would do. He checked with his business partners, and none of them had authorized the wire. Then he called his local Chase branch just to be safe. The branch representative reassured him there's no sign of any wire transfer on your account. He was relieved but cautious. Scott asked what to do next. The bank representative gave him the number for the official Chase fraud department and advised him to call immediately. He had no idea that at this moment, the scam was already in motion. Just as Scott was about to call the Chase fraud department, another text popped up on his screen. It said a Chase fraud specialist will contact you shortly regarding your account security. Before he could even process it, 30 seconds later, his phone rang, and the caller ID said Chase Bank. It was the exact same number listed on the back of his debit card and the same number the bank representative had given him just a few minutes ago. A calm, professional voice greeted him. They said, "Hello, Scott. This is the Chase fraud department. We're seeing unusual wire transfer activity on your account, and we need to act quickly to protect your funds." Now, his heart was still racing from the earlier text, but hearing those words from a seemingly real Chase employee put him at ease. This fraud specialist read off his exact account details, confirming his recent transactions, even ones he had just made that morning. Scott let out a relieved sigh. This was real. Chase had his back. Or so he thought. That professionalism of a real bank representative, that specialist who ran through a security protocol that felt entirely legit, they never asked for his password. They knew his account details. They acted as if they were protecting his funds, not stealing them. And the so-called specialist even warned him that he's being targeted by scammers. They said, "We need your help to secure your account before they drain your funds." Scott was all ears at that point. He was ready to do whatever they told him. Then came the most critical moment of the scam. "We're going to send you a verification code to confirm your identity." That's what the specialist explained. "This will allow us to lock down your account and prevent unauthorized transfers." Seconds later, Scott received a text from Chase Bank's real number. It was a genuine 2-factor authentication code, the kind that Chase sends when customers log in or authorize high-risk transactions. The specialist then said, "Please read the code back to me so we can verify your identity." And Scott complied, not knowing that this was the final key the scammers needed. The moment Scott read the numbers out loud, the fraud specialist, which actually was the scammer, immediately authorized wire transfers from his account. They took 11 transfers from his personal account and then 9 more from his business account. In just minutes, nearly $137,000 was gone. All of a sudden, doubt started to creep in. Everything had happened so fast. Scott barely had time to process the situation before the call dropped unexpectedly. And something felt off. He quickly dialed the real Chase fraud department, this time using the number printed on his bank statement. A representative picked up and they said, "Sir, we don't have any fraud cases open on your account." Scott's stomach dropped. He realized he had just handed over his life savings to a scammer. So the fraud alerts were fake. The texts were fake. The Chase fraud specialists, they were fake too. But the money transfers, those were 100% real. And worst of all, he had authorized them all himself. Panicked, Scott raced to his local Chase branch to report the fraud in person. But the response was brutally fast and cold. They said, "Sir, transfers are final. Once the money is sent, we can't get it back for you." They opened a fraud case, but Scott could already hear the defeat in their voices. The manager explained banks have 60 to 90 days to respond, and if the money was wired from American banks to banks overseas, the money is likely gone forever. After that, for 11 days, Scott waited for Chase to assign a case manager. And when they finally did, their conclusion was exactly what he feared. The claim was denied, the transactions were authorized by him, and there was nothing they could do. And you know, I have to tell you about the tragic story of Deborah Moss, who had spent over a decade building her savings up, finally ready to enjoy a slower life in rural California. But just weeks after moving in, a fraud alert text from Chase asked if she had approved a $35 charge from another state. The message looked real again, merging into her existing Chase text thread, and she quickly replied no. Then seconds later, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Chase Bank, and the woman on the line, Miss Barbara from Chase ATM Services, sounded calm and professional. She assured Deborah that Chase had blocked the charge and offered to send her a new debit card. But first, she needed to verify her identity. This Miss Barbara sent a real Chase verification code and asked Deborah to read it back. What Deborah didn't know was that the code was authorizing a wire transfer out of her account. And over the next few days, Ms. Barbara called multiple times, claiming issues with the card delivery and requesting more verification codes. Each time, Deborah read them back, unknowingly authorizing 6 wire transfers, some as high as $48,000. And by the time Deborah visited a Chase branch in person, it was too late. Her entire $160K life savings was gone. She actually owed Chase $895. Chase later denied her fraud claim, stating that she had not taken the appropriate steps to protect her account. Because she read back the transaction codes, Chase classified the transactions as authorized, leaving her with nothing. And then there's the story of Jennifer Davis, who had spent years saving for her first home, carefully putting away stacking $45,000. Then, in a single phone call, her dream was stolen. It started with a text from Chase Bank asking for her to confirm 3 unauthorized wire transfers. Alarmed, she immediately replied no. Again, seconds later, her phone rang. The caller ID matched Chase's real fraud department number, and the person on the line sounded professional and reassuring. They told her Chase was securing her account, but needed her to read back a verification code that had just been sent to her phone. The text was real, straight from Chase. But the code wasn't for security. It was for authorizing a wire transfer out of her account. Then, days later, Jennifer logged in and saw the balance. Her $38,000 in savings was down to just 18 cents. 2 fraudulent wire transfers wiped out over $25,000. Expecting Chase to help, she called the real fraud department, but instead, they denied her claim outright. They said the transactions look clean and appear to be authorized by you. So what Chase was basically saying is that we don't believe you. Because she had read back the codes, Chase blamed her for the loss, refusing to reimburse her stolen money. And Jennifer wasn't just devastated by the loss of her savings, she was betrayed by the very bank she trusted to protect it. So if it wasn't clear, this is how this scam works in 5 steps. Step 1, they fake the fraud alert. A text arrives claiming to be from your bank, asking if you authorized a suspicious charge or wire transfer. It looks 100% real because it merges into your existing bank messages. Then step 2, the immediate call from the bank. Within seconds, your phone rings from your bank's real number, but it's spoofed. They act as a calm professional fraud investigator, telling you they are here to secure your account. Then step 3, the scammer asks to verify your account. They say they need to confirm your identity to stop the fraud and will send you a security code via text. Then step 4, the victim has to give their real authentication codes that arrive from the real bank. And they have to read it back, unknowingly authorizing that wire transfer. In step 5, the money vanishes. Days later, you check your account and your money is gone. When you end up calling your real bank, They tell you the transfers are authorized and your claim is denied. And I want you to remember, while Chase is frequently reported in these scams, no bank is immune. Scammers use the same tactics to target customers across all major banks. Now, you might think at this point that I never fall for a scam like this. But here's the truth. Even the most cautious, financially savvy people have been tricked. And why is that? It's because these scams don't feel like scams. They feel real. Scammers don't just deceive you. They create an entire experience that mirrors how real banks operate. They're not guessing. They've studied the process. They know exactly how to manipulate you. And they know how to do that because the scams always start with a real sense of urgency. Imagine starting your day as usual, coffee in hand, phone buzzing with emails, when suddenly you receive a fraud alert from your bank. It'll be something like Chase Bank Alert. Did you authorize a $4,500 wire transfer? Reply yes or no to confirm. And then your heart jumps. What? I've never made a wire transfer. You're going to instinctively react. You're going to immediately reply no. You're going to feel a sense of panic because someone is trying to drain your account right now. And before you even have time to think, your phone is going to ring. This urgency bypasses rational thinking. The scammer doesn't give you a chance to pause and evaluate the situation. Instead, they create a crisis that demands your immediate action. And then the caller ID and SMS spoofing makes the fake text appear in a real bank thread for you. Scammers know that you won't trust a random number. That's why they make their messages appear inside the real banking thread. Your bank's name shows up as the sender. The text merges into your existing conversation with Chase or Wells Fargo or Bank of America, and it looks just like the legitimate alerts you've received before. So when you see the fraud alert inside of your real bank message history, you don't question it. And this works because people assume if it's in my bank's message thread, it must be legit. But it's not. And then you barely have time to process the fraud alert before your phone rings. The caller ID says it's your bank. The timing is flawless, exactly what you'd expect from a real fraud department too. They use banking lingo that sounds official. They assure you that they're here to help you. They speak with confidence like this is just another routine fraud case for them. And this works because victims expect a follow-up call from their bank. The seamless transition from text to phone call builds instant credibility. You think, wow, Chase is really on top of things. But the real Chase never called you. And then the scripts are identical to the bank's fraud department. Scammers don't just sound professional, they follow the exact script that a real fraud investigator would use. They say things like, you're on a recorded line, and for verification purposes, can you confirm the last 4 digits of your account? And they also say, we're seeing suspicious transactions on your account. We need to act fast. It's like word for word what you expect from a real bank employee. And Scott, one of the victims, said, everything they said, you're on a recorded line, here's who we are, here's what we see, here's what we need, was identical to what I've experienced with my actual bank's fraud team. And this works because familiarity breeds trust. Victims don't question the legitimacy because this is exactly how the real banks handle fraud. And then scammers already have some of your real banking details. One of the biggest shocks for scam victims is how much the scammers already know about them. They'll casually mention details like your real bank balance or something close to it. They'll mention a recent transaction you actually made. They'll say partial account numbers. They'll say like, I see you made a purchase at Target for $76. Is that correct? How do they know this? Well, they may have purchased leaked banking information from data breaches. They might have accessed partial details from phishing scams. In some cases, your computer or your phone may have been compromised with malware. And this obviously works because victims think if they have this much info, they must be my bank. And that's really the final piece that convinces people to comply. Now, if you ever wondered why Chase and other big banks fight so hard against refunding scam victims, the answer is pretty simple. They don't have to. Victims assume that because their money was stolen, the bank is going to step in, investigate, and make things right. But instead, they get hit with a cold reality. Banks aren't legally required to refund wire transfer fraud. If someone steals your credit card and makes fraudulent purchases, federal law requires the bank to reimburse you. If someone hacks your debit card and then drains your account, you're protected under the Electronic Fund Transfer Act. But with wire transfers, those are treated completely differently. Under the Fund Transfer Act, banks are not required to reimburse victims of wire fraud, even if they were tricked into making the transfer. So Chase and other institutions exploit this loophole to deny fraud claims and avoid taking financial losses. They argue that if the customer approved the wire transfer, even under deception, it was an authorized transaction. So once the money is sent, it's gone, and Chase has zero obligation to get it back. That's exactly why a lawyer from the National Consumer Law Center argued if banks knew they were on the hook for these losses, they'd have a stronger fraud protection in place. So since banks aren't rushing to protect you, you have to protect yourself. And here's how. You never want to respond to uninvited urgent requests. If you get a text or call or email claiming there's a problem with your bank account, stop and verify before doing anything. Scammers like to create panic to push you into reacting fast. Always, always, always verify directly with your bank. Hang up and call the bank's official number from their website. Never trust phone numbers provided in suspicious messages. They're fake. And to prevent scammers from accessing your accounts, even if they steal your passwords, use app-based authenticators like Google Authenticator or Authy instead of SMS codes. And unfortunately, some banks like Chase only use SMS-based authentication, which is easier to exploit. And then you want to make sure that you set up bank alerts for transactions so you can get real-time notifications for withdrawals and wire transfers. Some banks even let you require phone confirmation before large transactions go through. But here's what you can do if you were actually a victim of a scam like this. Even if your bank refuses to help you, you still have a few options. You'll want to immediately contact your bank and then request a wire recall. Though the chances are slim, acting fast is your best shot. Then you want to freeze your accounts and change all your login passwords immediately. Then you want to go and report that to the authorities. Even if the bank won't reimburse you, filing reports helps track scammers down and then push for policy changes. You can report the scam to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center and then the Federal Trade Commission as well. Most victims don't even know these resources exist because banks and government agencies do a terrible job at notifying the public that they can help you. Even though the system is stacked against you, reporting scams creates a paper trail, and the more reports they get, the harder it is for banks to ignore the problem. But let's face it, scams like this are showing up everywhere these days. In fact, I recently covered a shocking case where Chase Bank allowed more than 100 complete strangers to become authorized users on customers' accounts without their knowledge. It was a wild story. But more importantly, I'll show you how to spot this kind of fraud before fake cards start arriving at your front door. You can click on the next video here to learn the best way to protect yourself. You don't want to miss it. Thank you for watching.